All right, everybody, this is going to be our lesson for 4.5. We're going to be doing quadratic equations. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So it says where the graph of a function intersects the x-axis. So let's go ahead and look at that intersection. So I have an intersection here and I have an intersection here. Okay, these points, so the point x0 is called the zeros of the function. To find the zeros of a quadratic function, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, solve the related quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, so we can just look at this graph and let's just talk about where these zeros are. So this 0 I have at 3, 0, and this guy over here is at -1, 0. So the zeros are at x equals -1 and 3. All right, so the zero product property says for any real numbers a and b, so b equals 0, if a times b equals 0, then either a is 0 or b is 0. So ultimately, or both are 0. So ultimately, when we have this equation, so I have x minus 5 times x plus 3. They're being multiplied to each other. So in order for this to multiply to give me 0, one of those or both of them have to be 0. Okay, that's the only way I can get zeros to multiply by 0. So that is why when we solve quadratic functions and we get it all factored down to this point, that's why we set them equal to 0. So that's why we do, okay, so x minus 5 equals 0. And then we go ahead and we solve that, right? So we add 5 to both sides, so we get x equals 5. And then we have x plus 3 is equal to 0, because again, one of these has to be equal to 0 or both of them. So that's why we find both. So then x equals -3. So when I solve this problem, or this quadratic, my answers, or my zeros, are x equals 5, x equals -3. So if I were to graph these, I would have zeros, or it would go through the x-axis at 5 and -3. All right, so how to solve a quadratic equations by factoring. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get 0 on one side of the equation using the addition property. We're going to factor the expression on the other side of the equation. We're going to set each factor equal to 0, solve the equation. So, step 1, we need to factor this. I'm not sure how Mr. Teal showed you guys how to factor. I use a super old school method. I use the x. All this x is just to organize it. So I need something that multiplies to give me 12, but adds to give me -7. So this is your a times c value. This is your b value. Okay, so I'm looking for these two numbers. So what multiplies to give me 12 adds to give me -7, and that would be -3, -4. Double check it. -3 times -4 gives me 12. -3 plus -4 gives me -7. Okay, so when we factor this, on this particular one, the a value is just 1. So remember, you're just going to copy that down, 1x and 1x. Then we copy down our factors. So we're going to have a -3 and a -4. And then this equation equals 0. All right, so now that we're at this step, you take each factor, x minus 3, set it equal to 0, x minus 4, set it equal to 0, and we solve. So this guy I'm going to add 3 to both sides, and on this one I would add 4 to both sides. So we're going to get x equals 3 and x equals 4. Okay, so my zeros, or my answers, would be 3 and 4. All right, let's go ahead and just sketch what this graph would look like. We're just going to practice a little bit of everything here. So I'm going to have this graph. Okay, and I know the zeros on my graph are going to be 3. this would be 3, 0. Let's go ahead, graph the parabola. We're just sketching it, obviously. And then my other 0 right here would be 4. Perfect. All right, other things that we could see on this graph. I know what this is. My y-intercept is your c value. So this is your c value, which is also your y-intercept. So my y-intercept is going to be here at 0, 12. Okay, and then we kind of want to know, what is our vertex? What is HK? Question mark. So let's go ahead and revisit how to find your vertex on standard form. Okay, so hopefully you guys remember from one of the previous lessons, we have to do x equals opposite of b over 2a. So opposite of b is going to give me a positive 7 over 2 times a is 1. So this is, the x value is going to be at 7/2, which makes sense because this would be right smack dab in the middle. 7/2 is right in between 3 and 4. It is symmetrical. So it makes sense. Once you get that, then you plug it in. So y equals 7/2 squared minus 7 times 7/2 plus 12. All right, your guys' favorite fractions, I know. So now we're going to get y equals, when you square this, you square the top, square the bottom. So I'm going to get 49/4 minus 49/2 plus 12. Okay, since you guys hate fractions so much, clear the fraction. So what it means to clear the fraction is to multiply by your least common denominator between 4 and 2, so that would be 4. So make sure you multiply both sides by 4. Doing this is going to eliminate all the fractions. So now we're going to have a 4y equals, these 4's will go ahead and cancel each other out, so that's gone. And then 4 and 2 here, the 2 will cancel, but we'll still have to multiply this guy by a 2. And then the 12 will be multiplied by that 4. So then we're going to go ahead and get 49 plus minus 49 times 2 would be 98. And then 12 times 4 would give me that 48. All right, so when this is said and done, let's keep going. We're going to get 4y equals -1. Divide each side by 4. So now we're going to go ahead and get y equals -1/4. So this vertex would be at 7/2, -1/4. Both of those numbers make perfect sense. So just make sure this makes sense, and let's move on. All right, solve each quadratic equation by factoring. So we're going to factor it and then set them equal to 0, solve. My favorite thing is I see students, they will solve things that don't have equal signs, so just make sure that we're paying attention. So like earlier, you guys were just factoring expressions, there's no equal sign, so you can't solve it. But now there's an equal sign, it equals 0, so now I'm actually able to solve this. Okay, so looking at the first thing always for factoring, is there a greatest common factor? So I'm looking at 8x squared -16x. Yes, there is definitely a greatest common factor of 8 and an x. So we're going to factor out 8x. So I'm going to be left with x minus 2 equals 0. Can anything factor anymore? No, it cannot. So you still have two factors. You set them both equal to 0. So I'm going to set 8x equal to 0. And then I'm going to set this x minus 2 equal to 0. Okay, solving the first one, I would divide each side by 8. So we get x equals 0. So that's one of my answers. And then this guy over here, we're going to go ahead and add 2. Add 2. Okay, so on that one, now we're going to go ahead and have x, oh, I want to use a different color. Sorry, OCD. Alright, so we're going to get x equals positive 2. So my answers to this is 0, 2. I always like to list my answers least to greatest, just a really good habit to get into. Alright, look at number B. So looking at B, this does not equal 0. So step 1, make it equal 0. So x squared minus 9x plus 18 will equal 0. Okay, first, is there something that can be factored out? Greatest common factor. No, there is not. Okay, so next thing I'm going to try is, can it factor? So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 18 but add to give me negative 9. So that would be negative 6 and negative 3. Negative 6, negative 3. Your a value is 1, so when we write our parentheses sets, it's just going to be an x, a 1x, and a 1x. And then we plug in those numbers. So we have negative 6, negative 3. So it factors down to x minus 6, x minus 3. Now that we're here, you set them both equal to 0. Okay, and then we solve it. So this one I'm going to add 6, and this one I would add 3. So we'll go ahead and get x equals 6, x equals 3. Okay, so my answer would be 3 and 6. Alright, I absolutely love C. You should star it. This is a great problem. I love it. So star, star, star. Good, good, good. We like this problem a lot. So, first things first, get it to equal 0. So we're going to have 20x squared minus 45 equals 0. Second thing you check, is there a greatest common factor? So can something come out of 20x squared and negative 45? Hopefully you guys are all saying yes, 5. So this is going to give me a 4x squared minus 9. Okay, the reason I love this problem is hopefully you guys are identifying right here that this is the difference of two perfect squares. Okay, the reason this is the difference of two perfect squares because this is really 2x squared and this is really 3 squared. And you guys should know on the difference of two perfect squares, it goes a plus b, a minus b when it factors. So don't forget about your 5. So your 5 is just going to hang out front. So your first one is going to give me a 2x plus 3. And my second factor will be a 2x minus 3. Difference of perfect squares equals 0. Check it. Can anything else factor? Can I factor anything more? No. So you take all these factors, equal them to 0. 5 equals 0. Doesn't make sense. So that's nothing. It's not an answer. So we get 2x plus 3 equals 0. And then we'll get 2x minus 3 equals 0. So we'll go ahead, subtract 3 on this one, add 3 on this one. So now we'll have 2x equals negative 3, 2x equals positive 3. All right, final step, divide those things by 2. So we're going to go ahead and get x equals negative 3 halves and x equals positive 3 halves. So negative 3 halves, comma, positive 3 halves. Beautiful. Alright, so for this next question, we're going to go ahead and use our TI-84s. So I forgot that we were using that, so let me go ahead and pull up my TI-84. That is not what I wanted to do. Let's see here. TI-84. Here we are. Okay, perfect. Let me move this calculator down. All right, here we are. I'll slide it over too. Okay, so it says use the table feature of our graphing calculator to find our zeros. So what I want us to do is, like always, let's go ahead and start with a fresh calculator. So remember, you go to second, memory, 712. Okay, and it cleared everything, so we're starting fresh. Okay, so we want to go graph this. So to graph things, well, actually, before we do that, let's minimize this. We need to add over the 2 first, which I'm sure you guys realized. So we're going to go ahead and have, so we're going to have negative 2x squared plus 3x plus 2 equals 0. All right, so step 1. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys how to do the calculator portion of this. Let's get my mouse to turn back on. There we go. So calculator, you go to y equals. To graph anything, we can go to this y equals. We're going to plug that in. So huge mistakes that kids make is you guys put minus 2x squared when indeed you guys need a negative if it's in the front. So you need negative, and then 2, here's the x, or well, right here is x squared. Nope, that's not. Delete. Backspace. Delete. Get out of there. Delete it. There we go. So 2x squared plus 3x plus 2. Alright, so once you guys plug it in, now we can go ahead and if you guys look right here above graph, in blue it says table. So we're going to hit second table, and it's going to bring up the table. Okay, so what we're looking for is we're looking for when our numbers switch from positives to negatives, because when they switch from positives to negatives, that means I am crossing the x-axis. Okay, so that means I am crossing the x-axis. So let's go ahead and scroll up a little bit. So hopefully you guys can see. In between 0 and -1, it's switching from positive to negative. And then between this 2 and 3, it goes from 0 to -7. So it's switching between positive and negative. So we're going to go ahead and write those numbers down. So it went, wish I could keep it up there. So it went -1, -3. Okay, there's going to be a 0 in between here. So we're going to skip, and then it went 0, 2, and then it went 1, 3, and then there's going to be another 0. So let's figure out how to see those zeros on our calculator. So to see those zeros on our calculator, because right now I don't see where y is 0. This one we see, it's at 2, 0, but this one there's a 0 right in between here. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to adjust our table. So if you guys see above window it says table set, we're going to go there. And now let's go say, let's have the table go up. This is saying this is going up by 1. How about let's go up by 1/2? And now let's go back to our table, so second table. And now hopefully we can see our 0. And sure enough, between that -1 and 0, right at -1/2, there is a 0. So our 1 0 is at -0.50, and then our second 0 is right here at 2 0. Okay, so we had one at -0.50, and then our other one was at 2 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and highlight those. These are my zeros. Okay, so the answer to this would be x equals -1/2, and x equals 2. So those would be the solutions to this quadratic. Let's go ahead and write ourselves a little note of what we did. Even though I'm sure you guys won't remember, but so since the y values change from positive to negative, a 0 will occur. Okay, and we know there was going to be a 0 in between x equals -1 and x equals 0. So my answer to this quadratic would be -1/2 and 2. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and try the next one. So first things first, we need to move everything over, so I need to add over an x, and we're going to have to subtract a 4. So we're going to get 4x squared minus 13x plus 3 equals 0. Okay, now we're going to go plug that guy into our calculator. So let's go back to this calculator. I'll slide over so we can see it. Okay, we're going to go back to y equals. We're going to clear that guy out. And now we're going to replace it with 4x squared. 4x squared minus 13x plus 3. Okay, and then we want to go check out this table. So second graph will take me to the table. Remember, I am looking for the zeros. So notice right here between -1/2 and 0, oh, just kidding, 0 and +1/2. So between these two numbers, it went from a positive to a negative. So I know there's a 0 between 0 and 1/2. Okay, and then let's find that other 0. And there's my other 0, 3, 0. Okay, so again, we're going to be dealing with the same situation here. I need to change what this chart, this graph, this is a table, what the table is going up by. So right now I'm going up by 1/2, but I need to get something in between here. So let's go adjust it again. So second table set. And now let's maybe go up by 1/4. So let's do 0.25. Go back to our table, and now we'll see if we can see our 0. So scroll down, and there she is. So at 1/4, there's a 0. And then at 3, there was a 0. So our chart, this is like right underneath, there we go. So our chart went, we're not going to put all those like quarters going up by 1/4. So we had 0, 3 was a point, and then we had that 0.250, and then we had 1, -6, we had 2, -7, and then we had 3, 0. So we were able to find both of those zeros here and here. So the answer, or the zeros to this quadratic, would be 1/4, 3. All right. We only have one little bit left. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys how to use your graph to find the zeros. So a little bit different. So now we're going to use the graph to find the zeros. So let's go back to our calculators. Slide that over to see this first one. Go back to your y equals, clear it out. So now we're going to go ahead and do x squared plus 2x minus 24. Okay, instead of table, we're now going to go look at the graph. So there's my graph. I can see both of my zeros in this window, so it's fine. So here's a 0 and here's a 0. So I'm going to show you guys how to calculate a 0. So to calculate anything on a graph or anything to do with a graph, you're going to be using these buttons up here. And notice on top of trace, we have calculate. So we're going to hit second calculate, or second trace. Okay, we are trying to find zeros, so we're going to find a 0. Press enter. So you're going to go to the left of the 0. So my little bug is off the screen, so I'm going to go to the left until I can see my little buggy. There he is. Okay, so I think the easiest way, because sometimes you guys have a really hard time with what's left of it and what's right of it, go as close as you can to the 0, and then it says left bound, and then click left. Okay, so now I'm on the left side of the 0. Press enter. Now it says go to the right of it. So now I'm going to press right, so in this case it's right below it. Press enter. Your 0 should fall between those two little lines. It says, you want me to guess? Press enter. And then it tells you, okay, you have a 0 at -6. So my first 0 is at -6. Okay, now you have to do that whole process again for your next one. So we go second, calculate, 0. Now it wants you to go to the left, so now you got to slide all the way over. Okay, so now to the left of it would be right below it. Press enter. To the right of it would be right above it. Again, your 0 should fall between those two lines. Press enter. And then I have a 0 at 4. So the zeros for this problem was x equals -6, x equals 4. So my zeros are -6 and 4. Perfect. Okay, next one. First, let's get in standard form. So we're going to have 1/2 x squared minus x minus 6. Come on, you were cooperating this whole time. All right, back to the calculator. So, again, we're going back to y equals 0. I wonder if that's going to mess up because it's behind my face. I'll make it smaller. That's harder to see. Well, whatever. I can look at it on your paper. All right, so we're going to go ahead and clear that. Clear. So this one's 1/2 x squared. So we're going to do 1/2 x squared, and then it's minus x and -6. Okay, again, you're going to hit graph. We can see both of our zeros in the screen. We're good. Second, trace. Second, calculate. Go down to 0. Okay, once you go to the left of it, so that's going to be on top on this side. Okay, go to the right of it, and press enter. So this one's at -2.606. 2.606. I always recommend rounding 3 decimal places unless we're talking about money or otherwise stated. Okay, let's find the second one. So we go second trace. Again, we go to 0. Move to the... Okay, so now on this one, the left of it's going to be right below. Right of it's going to be right on top. 0 should be in between those two lines. And this one's at 4.606. Alright, so we had x equals -2.606 and x equaled 4.606. Alright, and I feel like it's overkill if I do that last one, so hopefully that was enough. 2 examples was enough. I'm going to go ahead and stop the notes here. I'm not going to do the rest. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and make sure you watch all your notes and take all your notes.